Hello again, fellow audiophiles. I am Wave Theory, and I know you've been waiting for this one, and it is time to review the HiFiMan Ananda Stealth Magnet Edition. A round ear, open back, planar magnetic headphone. I did a first impressions of this a couple of weeks ago, for which I will put the link down below, and I've been listening to it a fair amount ever since, and it's time to get into the full review. And I've seen comments on some of my other non-HiFiMan reviews lately that are just like, when is this one coming out? But here it is. Okay, so if you are not a subscriber, please remember to like and subscribe and do those things that you do to support YouTube channels. And with that, we will go ahead and get into it here. So, as I just mentioned, full size, around the ear, open back, planar magnetic headphone. The list price on the Ananda Stealth Magnet Edition is, at least the HiFiMan website claims, is $999 US. However, as of the filming of this video, that price is $699 US on their website, and I will put links to where you can buy it down in the description below. I do not know how long this so-called special price will last. I hope that between me filming this video and getting it edited and ready to go out and upload it and all of that, that they don't change it. We'll see what happens. Now, HiFiMan has changed the price of a lot of their line, and those prices have stayed that way for several weeks here in the summer of 2022. Summer here in the Northern Hemisphere, anyway. And, I don't know how long, I don't know what that means. In the past, the Aria Stealth Magnet Edition, for example, was $1,600, and they've now dropped it to $1,300. In the past, when they have taken their $1,600 unit and dropped it to $1,300, it's because they were coming out with something new. I am not in touch with HiFiMan on that level. I have no idea what, if anything, they have up their sleeves, but my interest is piqued. We'll see where that goes. Okay, back to this one. So this is kind of, if you will, the lower middle entry into HiFiMan's line of these egg-shaped headphones right here. The entry into their big planars with this shaped of ear cup is the Edition XS, which I have reviewed in the past, so link in the description, and which I have right here. I will get into some comparisons with the Edition XS here in a little bit. Then you step up, the next model up is this one, is the Ananda, so $500, $700/$1,000. Then the Aria Stealth Magnet now is the next one up at $1,300 special price, normally $1,600. And then we have the HE1000 V2, which is special price, and I have one right here at $2,000 US, but is normally $3,000. And then there's the HE1000 SE, which is the Stealth Magnet edition of the HE1000 series. So that is where the Ananda Stealth Magnet currently slots in. Now, it is important for me to mention that this is the Stealth Magnet version of the Ananda, because it is the latest in HiFiMan's egg-shaped line to get the trickle-down effect of that Stealth Magnet technology, which was originally on the Susvara, which I've also reviewed, link in the description. Okay, was in the Susvara, and then it made its way to the HE1000 SE, and then it made its way into the Aria. The Edition XS has the stealth magnets, and so the Ananda is the most recent one to get to that stealth magnet introduction. Now, if I understand correctly, this is also the cheapest of these egg-shaped models from HiFiMan that has what they call, and it's written on the box here so I don't mess it up, the Neo Super Nano Diaphragm, okay, which basically just means the actual planar magnetic membrane in there, the diaphragm in there, has a thickness that they measure in the nanometers instead of the the next common unit up, which is micrometers or micrometers, that sort of thing. So, advertising it as the first model to get into that super thin, super light planar diaphragm that is found in the Aria Stealth and in the, I think it was the HE1000 V2 where that, or at least the HE1000 series where that first appeared. And so that's another trickle down into this level here. Okay, so other features of this. I want to show you the box that this thing comes in. Here it is. Okay, it's really nothing special. You can see here's where it talks about the diaphragm, here's where it's got the sticker for the stealth magnets and all of that. It's basically just a shoebox. Okay, the cabling comes in this little box on the inside. You get this thing in here that says HiFiMan and all that. Why am I showing you this? I normally don't do unboxings and that sort of thing on my channel. I personally have never understood the appeal to that, but I understand that some people like it. Either way, the only reason I'm showing you this box right here is to see how different it is. Like, this is the $1,000 special price $700 unit, where the Edition XS is the $500 unit, and it comes in a box that looks like this, which is just much higher quality, just nicer. And so I don't know why, but the cheaper model has the nicer packaging here, which is just odd. That's the only reason I'm showing you that. Okay, so yeah, we'll go with that. Now, some specs on the Ananda Stealth Magnet Edition here. I'm reading this right off of that packaging. They have a rated sensitivity of 103 decibels. I believe that's decibels per milliwatt, although I don't know at what frequency that was measured. This does not say. And then a rated impedance of 27 ohms. Now, planars generally have a pretty flat impedance, which means it's going to be a 27 ohm impedance at over most of the audible frequency range. Okay, so that means that these are fairly easy to drive, and I will talk about amping and drivability in a little bit, but it's sensitive, and you can drive this off of DAPs. Like, I have a FIO M11 Plus in a DAP for review, and that drove these just fine, Okay, which, you know, can't always say about something like the Edition XS or other large planars, which can put quite a load on particularly mobile and transportable amps. So pretty easy driving. Now, the stock cable, if you've seen my other HiFiMan reviews, you'll recognize it. Nice little tangle here. Okay, it is basically their new stock cable. At least it seems like $1,000 is the price point. $1,000 and under, you get this cable. So it looks the same as the one that came with the Edition XS. It came with the Deva Pro, came with the HE400 SE, came with HER9. Okay, so a bunch of their cheaper models where you have the right angle 3.5 millimeter 1/8 inch plug here, single-ended with the 1/4 inch or 6.35 millimeter adapter, and then on the headphone end terminates into the dual 3.5 millimeter TRS plugs at the headphone end. The reason I am quite confident that this is the same cable that came with those other cheaper models that I just mentioned is, for one, it looks and feels the same. Okay, it looks and feels identical, and I also checked the continuity using a digital multimeter. They are wired the same way as all of those others, because remember, the Deva Pro and the HER9 need the special wiring because they are compatible with the TRRS connection on the Blue Mini dongle. Okay, but the Ananda here is classic HiFiMan in its wiring. It has the dual 3.5 millimeter flush mounted jacks on the cups here, and it really does not matter what dual 3.5 millimeter cable. You can use TRS, you can use TS. Okay, it's just more classic wiring. Any of them will work. Now, so the same complaints that I have had about this cable in those other cheaper units applies here. It's not ergonomically the greatest. Like you can see, it still has some memory in it here just as I'm holding it. And it also it doesn't sound great. And I realize that there's going to be a lot of people who might be watching my channel for the first time that, you know, you just heard me say the cable doesn't sound great, and you're going to be like, snake oil, I'm out of here. Okay, before you go, please check out a link that I will put down below, because I am an actual scientist and I have put a lot of thought into cable differences. And I have created a whole video series explaining the science, real science that we have known about for 50 plus or 100 plus years, depending on whether it's brain science or electricity science. Okay, please check out that series before you dismiss me completely. okay, on that. So yeah, I think you're gonna want a different cable there, because like the biggest problem that it has here is like it's got a treble peak in it. Like sharp S's are even sharper than they normally are through a lot of other cables that I listen to. So that cable injects some extra sibilance, and I think it loses some micro detailing in it too, as compared to just a basic Hart cable. So this is a Hart cable, which I just happen to have the 1/4 inch plug on it, you know, for an adapter, but just, you know, a standard Hart cable with the dual 3.5mm TS connections takes a lot of that excess treble energy out, and I thought actually improved some of the spatial performance, gave a little bit more soundstage, a little bit cleaner imaging and separation on the Ananda and all that, you know. And as these models keep getting more and more resolving, you start to tell those differences more and more. So if you're going to buy this, I think you should think about an aftermarket cable. For most of my testing, I used a Corpse Cables Gravedigger. With this, that was balanced at the amp end with 4-pin XLR, and then used an XLR to 1/4 inch adapter if I need to plug it into a single-ended amp. Okay. What else to talk about? The build here. If you're familiar with HiFiMan and their egg-shaped cups, I mean, you see what's going on with you got a lot of ear room in there. There's a fair amount of depth inside, so unless your ears are big and stick straight out, like for most humans, I think this is going to completely encase the ear without touching anywhere on the inside. Okay, so that's good. I think that might be metal. Okay, they might finally have a metal grill here on the outside on this level here. But you also notice, like, going from the $500 unit, the Edition XS, to this $1,000 unit or $700 unit is the difference in headband. We have the newer HiFiMan style, like cheaper headband here with just the single padded band here on the Edition XS. We have a suspension strap system here, which I think is the same suspension strap system, easy for me to say, okay, as is found on the Sundara. But it's a little bit different than the one that's on the HE1000 series here. I know we have the floppy leather strap, but like the shape of this, the spring steel here on the headband, okay, kind of sticks out like this. If my memory of the Aria series is that it's more like this, just all black. Okay, so it's a little different. There's definitely a comfort upgrade from this to this. Like, it's noticeable. I didn't have huge comfort issues with the Edition XS, but I have read on forums and all that around on the interwebs that a lot of people do. But this is much more comfortable, I think. Okay, they are similar in mass. Okay, actually, Edition XS feels a little heavier just here in my hand. I'd have to look up the numbers on that. So the Ananda here is even lighter than the Edition XS. Okay, so that helps with the comfort too. Now, there is a bit of clamp on this. This was a brand new in the box unit, so there's a bit of clamp on it, and that is loosening. But even now, after, you know, a couple hundred hours of use, plus about 50 plus hours, closer to 60 hours of it being on a headphone stand, doing some break-in time, like, it still clamps kind of hard. Every now and then I would feel it on my jaw here, a little bit of pain. But like this one, I remember the Aria Stealth magnet that I got was pretty new, was pretty tight, but it had this style headband, and this is nice and comfortable now. So I think that will break in time. I just don't know how long it will take. Okay, so just something to keep in mind there. All right, so yeah, I guess it's probably about time then to get into the sound, because that's that's really why we're all here ultimately, isn't it? So as I mentioned, with amping and drivability, these are pretty easy to drive. It drove just fine off of the FIO M11 Plus DAP, for example. On pretty much all of the amps that I tried, this required about 2 to 3 hours less of potentiometer positioning than its sibling model, the Edition XS. So more often than not, I mean, it's an easier drive. It is an easier drive. So HiFiMan's website and all that, they talk up that these can be mobile friendly, and yes, you can drive them with a portable amplifier. The issue though is like I would not use these on the go or outdoors because of this big open back area here. Any kind of wind will pop that super thin driver, so I just wouldn't risk it if I were you. But to take these with, like, and use in a hotel or something like that where you're out of the wind if you're traveling, you could definitely use a portable device to power these, all that too. You'll want some kind of a carrying case though, because like I said, this is the box you get and it's not travel friendly. Okay, so you'll want to figure something like that out for transportation, which is a thing that I've noticed about HiFiMan is they sound great, generally speaking, and spoiler, this is no exception, but they're a little bit rough around the edges sometimes in the whole ergonomic sense, and that is true here. All that they talk up easy to drive, use it anywhere, but yeah, how are you going to get it there? And don't take it outside. Just don't do it. Okay. Yeah. All right. So yeah. Anyway, back to the sound. Other amps that I did primarily the testing, other than that M11 Plus, is I tried this on my Schiit Asgard 3, tried it on Lake People G111. I used HiFiMan's own EF400 DAC amp a fair amount, which I have a review for coming out very soon as well. And let's see what else. My Vioelectric HPA V281 would be the big gun amp on this. I used my Chord Hugo 2 as a DAC amp and a DAC a little bit here, and then other DACs that I tried would have been the Schiit Modius, the Lake People, no, not Lake People, why am I drawing a blank? Schiit Modius, the HiFiMan EF400 is a DAC amp. I have the Topping DX7 Pro Plus in for review, so I use that here too, both DAC and amp. And I use Schiit Bifrost 2 and my Berkeley Audio Designs Alpha Series 2 DAC fed by a Singer SU2 USB bridge. Okay, so those are all the signal chains that I can remember using on here, at least combinations of those amps and DACs. And bottom line, on all of those, this thing sounds pretty good. Okay, it sounds pretty good. Okay, so as I mentioned in my first impressions, the sound signature here is definitely tuned, at least from a frequency response standpoint, like HiFiMan's big egg-shaped headphones are going. All of them are starting to sound very reminiscent of the HE1000 V2, just big in staging, but from a frequency response standpoint, mostly neutral, but tilting warm overall, with a little bit of added treble energy into it. So it's just a warm, very shallow V to it, but still mostly neutral. I think Kurawong over at HeadFi refers to that as listening neutral. Pretty close to this a little bit, although it might have a little bit more energy, a little bit more treble energy than what he would call that true listening neutral. Okay, so that's the sound signature. So if you've heard Aria Stealth Magnet, if you've heard the Edition XS and all of that, this will sound pretty familiar from a frequency response tuning standpoint. Now, when I first got this and did my first impressions, I thought there was just a little bit of grit and grain in particularly the lower mids, and I thought there was just a little bit bass lean, at least compared to the Edition XS. So I gave these about 55 to 60 hours of pretty aggressive break-in, where I just played music on them on several overnight sessions with about an 80 decibel average sound pressure level. Okay, and what I noticed is that lower mid grit and grain completely disappeared. So they are nice and smooth and clean and clear through the entire frequency range. And I don't think the bass presence really increased much, but I think it tightened in terms of its quickness and its speed and its accuracy. Okay, so let's talk about that then. So bass extension here, these dig deep. All of these big HiFiMans dig pretty deep. The question is just how much bass presence do they have? In the true sub bass, so below about 60 hertz or so, I don't think there's quite as much sub bass here on the Ananda as there is on the Edition XS or as there is on the HE1000 V2, but the V2 here, the Heck V2 and the XS, I think, are elevated a little bit. So this is a little bit closer to a neutral target, I think, in terms of this bass presence. The OG Ananda, which I have not heard, but it had a reputation for being a bit bass lean. I would not call these bass lean. There is definitely a fair amount of grunt here. It's just not as present in the true deep bass as the XS is, all that. However, in the mid bass, so from about that 60, 70, 80-ish hertz cutoff that I just mentioned, up through 200, 250 hertz, there is just as much, if not more, mid bass presence than there is on the Edition XS. No bloat. I don't want you to think that they've added in mid bass and then that bleeds into the mid range. It doesn't. But I think this one punches just a little bit harder than the Edition XS does, but the Edition XS will slam just a little bit harder. So, and I think that's because this hits just a little bit harder between about 80 and 120-ish hertz, whereas this one hits just a little bit harder below 80 hertz, okay? Not a huge difference in either direction, it's just there and there to be noticed. But I would not call, and I'm a bit of a bass head, I would not call the new Ananda Stealth Magnet Edition bass lean, and I know that has been a concern of some. The mid-range here is nicely present. It is nicely tonally balanced. I did not notice any shoutiness or honkiness, and if you watch my channel at all, you know that I am sensitive to those things, so I did not pick up on any unusual peaks or dips through the mid-range. I think there's very good tonal balance there. And then the treble, I think, is also nicely tonally balanced. Cymbals have some good pitch definition to them. There is a little bit of shimmer, not a lot. You still know that you're listening to a HiFiMan in the treble, because HiFiMans have their own house sound in the treble region, which does get just a little bit thin and shimmery and brittle at times, but it's not bad. I did not find it fatiguing over long periods of time, as I have with some HiFiMans in the past. Is pretty good there, okay? From a spatial presentation aspect, you still get that big, wide, tall presentation that you get from all of these egg-shaped HiFiMans. They just sound huge and grand, so you do get that here. The spatial presentation here is more coherent and complete and believable than the Edition XS is, but is not going to catch Aria Stealth or the HE1000 V2, okay, in that, but it is a step up from the XS. I think they have positioned this appropriately on that technical aspect in their pricing. Okay, what else do we need to talk about here? The timbre is quite natural. The mid-range timbre in particular, I think, sounds really good. Voices sounding like voices, guitars sound like guitars, pianos like pianos, horns like horns, etc. It's not quite as silky smooth, amazingly good as like an HD600 or HD650/6XX, but it's not far behind. It really isn't. Pretty solid timbre in there. Resolution and detail, probably, like if there is a more resolving headphone under $1,000, I haven't heard it yet. Okay, so it's right there. Okay, I mean, leading the pack probably in under $1,000 headphones in terms of both macro details and micro detail resolution. And so you get things like room reverbs and ghost notes pulled out really well. It separates instruments from each other really well, and so forth. And yeah, like this, the detail is really good for the amount of money, I think. So yeah, so what this does then sonically, if I can tie a little bow on all of these traits, is HiFiMan has definitely found a sound with these egg-shaped models, from a frequency response tuning aspect, from a presentation aspect. They vary, the individual units vary a little bit, just a couple of dB here and there in terms of like how much sub-bass presence there is versus mid-bass versus mid-range versus lower treble versus upper treble. They vary by a dB or two, it sounds like, here and there, but for the most part, they are all tuned to sound very similar, so this is right in there. And then they bring with that excellent timbre that is solid timbre throughout the whole frequency range. Okay, you can find individual headphones that do an aspect of the frequency range with better timbre, like the HD 600 series doing mid-range, for example. Okay, but from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz, these do a rock solid job that whole way through in their timbre. Okay, or the HiFiMans that look like this anyway at their price points. And then I think they lead the respective price points, and I'm going to put the Ananda in this category too. I think these HiFiMans that look like this lead their price points in terms of detail retrieval / resolution and spatial presentation, both in terms of the accuracy of the soundstage and then the imaging and the separation in there within. And so, yeah, what this did at $500, in my opinion, this did at $3,000, what the Aria Stealth Magnet is doing at $1,600, now $1,300, and all of that, I think this slots right in there where it's a great all-arounder, sounds great with a lot of music genres. It's got that warm-ish, but still sort of V, but mostly neutral tuning. It has a healthy amount, but not overboard, like, you know, bass physicality. And then it leads its price point in terms of resolution and spatial presentation with not necessarily the best timbre over the entire frequency range, but still excellent timbre through the whole frequency range. Okay, so I think HiFiMan has done it again at a price point with that sound with this headphone. Now, a lot of people have been asking in the comments for me to compare these to the other HiFiMan units. The most common one being the Edition XS. And specifically, is this at $1,000 worth, you know, double the price of this one at $500? Let me say that at the current price that this is selling for at $700 USD, yes, absolutely, it is worth the extra $200 over this. Without a doubt, in my mind. At $1,000, it's for some it will be, and for others it won't be. And a lot of it is going to have to do with what signal chain are you working with, too, because the differences between these two definitely became more and more apparent as quality of amp and DAC improved, which should surprise no one. Okay, but just letting you know that that's the case here. Okay, so I mentioned a little bit earlier, like the difference. I think the Edition XS has a little bit more sub-bass rumble and presence, and thus a little bit more deep bass slam. This one still has excellent sub-bass presence and good rumble to it, but it's a little bit, the physicality is a little bit more geared in the mid-bass, so it punches harder. Okay, so whatever, you know, pick your preference there. But again, the Ananda is not a bass lean headphone anymore, in my opinion. Okay, now the advantages that this one has, like there are build advantages. The suspension strap headband here is definitely more comfortable than this headband. This one is lighter than this one. Okay, so there is that. You get the nanometer diaphragm in this one, which is not in this one. Okay, but then sonically, other than that bass difference, like the Ananda is subtly more resolving. It does not pop out immediately, but in time you start to pick out particularly micro details, just the tiny stuff that's there that that convince your ears and your brain that what you're hearing is more lifelike and real, are more present on the Ananda than they are on the Edition XS. The Ananda has a little bit more refinement. It doesn't sound quite as grainy or as harsh, so it has a little bit more refined, a little bit more mature, grown-up sound, if you will, okay, on it. And then also its spatial presentation. They are about equal in terms of soundstage width and height, but the Ananda is going to do a little bit better in the layering, in the depth dimension. okay, and its imaging and its separation are a little bit stronger. Particularly the thing that stood out to me spatially with the Ananda is that not only was the center image more defined, there was more going on in left center and left right than what the Edition XS was able to do. So sonically, it's an easy upgrade to go up to the Ananda just on sound alone, with this one at $700 over this one at $500. Now at $1,000, I'm a little bit less likely to say, do it, do it, do it. Some are going to hear the differences and appreciate the difference and think that the price is worthwhile, particularly when you throw in this one is friendlier with a wider range of amps because it's easier to drive, and the not insignificant comfort advantage that this has over the Edition XS. So if you are driving these with like a shit Modius and Asgard 3 stack, okay, which is kind of where I said get in on the Edition XS with that, right? The differences between these two would not be worth a $500 price difference. Step up to a Bifrost 2 and a Lake People G111, for example. That's when you start to hear it a little bit more. Even with HiFiMan's EF400 DAC amp, I thought the differences between these two came out a little bit more than with the shit Modius and Asgard 3 stack, which is a victory for that HiFiMan all-in-one box, okay, which a review is coming. But not quite as much as the differences the Bifrost 2 and the G111 revealed. Then jump up all the way to my big guns with the Berkeley Alpha Series 2 DAC and the Vioelectric HPA V281 amp, and it was just readily apparent that the Ananda is the superior headphone all around to the Edition XS. I'm not knocking the Edition XS. I still think it's the best $500 headphone out there right now. It's just that this more expensive Big Brother unit is better, as it should be, okay? And it is. This in no way, the Ananda in no way is going to catch the HE1000 V2. No way, okay? Better in pretty much every way. Still more natural timbre, still more accurate in the spatial presentation. This has both the bass slam and punch, where this one had the punch and the XS had the slam and so forth, but this is just more refined, defined, much more resolving, that sort of thing. Unfortunately, I did not have the Aria Stealth Magnet Edition in-house to do a direct compare, but I'm quite convinced that this will slot in between the Edition XS and the Aria in terms of overall performance quite well, because what I am noticing is that HiFiMan, not only have they landed on the tuning that they like, they are very good at tuning these and putting a presentation, an entire technical package together that is appropriate for the price, and then scaling it so that as you move up their line, you are definitely getting more back for your money. I don't think we have a law of diminishing returns thing with their line. Honestly, I don't. But so again, I didn't have the Aria Stealth Magnet Edition on hand to do a direct A/B test, but I would be quite confident that it is the overall superior headphone to this one, and that you would notice it, more if you were driving that Aria with at least like a shit Bifrost 2 Lake People G111, okay, or step up to something like a Burson Soloist 3XP or whatever, something like that that's a little bit higher in quality. You would definitely notice it. Okay. Yeah, long-winded again, but I hope that all of those words were useful and helpful, because I don't think there are too many reviews of this out there right now. So just a quick recap. On sale for $700 as of the filming of this. Absolutely worth that. Definitely the best headphone at $700. It could very well be the best all-arounder under $1,000, even if you do buy it for the $999 price. Easy to drive for a planar of this size, so it's friendly to use with DAPs. Okay, you get that big HiFiMan sound, you get good timbre over the whole frequency range, you get excellent detail. Sorry guys, my camera cut off the recording there for reasons I don't know, so I'll just finish here on my phone real quick. I was just saying that excellent detail retrieval for the price here, and yeah, it's really solid. I think it is an upgrade over the Edition XS. depending on the source gear you have, will depend on whether it's actually worth $500 at its normal price, more than the Edition XS, and so forth. But another really solid entry into HiFiMan's line of these egg-shaped planar magnetic headphones. Okay, so easy to recommend. All right, yeah, I'll leave it at that. I am Wave Theory. Thanks for watching. Oh, right. Buy a different cable. The stock cable is still not good. There we go. All right, I am Wave Theory. This has been my review of the HiFiMan Ananda Stealth Magnet Edition. As always, thanks for watching and enjoy the music.